Hello, everyone, and welcome to our sixth and final LinkedIn Live session on the initial SuccessFactors release update of 2020. I'm Craig Powers, Managing Editor at Rizing. My girlfriend is weeping as this might be the last time I'm motivated to comb my hair and trim my beard for a while. Last week, we educated you on learning, and now we're going to talk about the big one, Employee Central and Employee Central Payroll. So if you're joining us, you know how this works. Grab a drink, something strong if you like. We actually have someone from Europe today, so it's 5 o'clock there, so no judgment from me. A reminder, if you missed our previous episodes, you can find those on our Rizing HCM LinkedIn page. All of these were meant to prepare you for the H1 2020 release, and we've also been taking notes along the way as we've helped our customers manage the updates. So we'll be back with a webinar later this month on June 23rd to talk about those changes and how SAP shared this release, how they shared information, and I'll talk about that more later. But before we get started, I want to make sure you can hear me. Shoot me a thumbs up in the chat to let me know. Okay, good. And also a disclaimer with the sheer number of us working from home. If our stream drops, bear with us as I get it back up. All right, and let's jump in with our experts this week. I have Paul Rose, our Practice and Solution Center Director. Paul, you are our first panelist from across the pond. How is it in the afternoon over there?
It's not as good as it has been in the last week or two, Craig, but we'll take that. We're not used to getting the good weather we've been getting over the May month of May. So it's it's promising, I must say.
Excellent. And along with Paul, I have Serge Boulet, our Practice Director for Payroll and Time. This is actually the first time we're in 3 different countries when we talk, so that's pretty cool. Serge, how are you doing?
Fine yourself. I mean, it's been, so I know you had the comment of like, is it like overnight because my blinds are closed, but it's more about the lightning. So it's, you know, it's a little bit dark outside, so I made it, so it's, no, it's doing good. Great, sorry.
Yeah. So obviously I have a well-lit home office here. I've been trying to avoid shooting light into people's eyes over this last 6 weeks. But I'm going to get out of here, and I'm going to let you guys discuss the latest updates to EC and EC Payroll.
Thanks.
Thank you, Craig, and nice T-shirt as well. You must post me one of those. So I'm happy to be here again with Serge. Serge is one of our, I suppose, well, what do we call him? The El Maestro, I think. I christened him anyway, El Maestro. So a lot of young whippersnappers looking to reach the level of Serge and Payroll, but not quite getting to that level. But so it's good. Happy to be here, Serge. From my perspective, just do a quick introduction. So as Craig alluded to as well, I'm based in Ireland. We have a team of consultants in Ireland and the UK as well. So working with SAP SuccessFactors with Rizing for the past 7 or 8 years, and I suppose most of my experience comes around core HR integrations, and previously would have worked with PeopleSoft, Lawson, and SAP on-prem as well. So that's it from my side. Serge, you want to give the guys an intro?
Yeah, young, but a lot of experience, eh? I can see.
Yeah.
So thanks. Thanks, Paul. So hi, everyone. So again, my name is Serge Boulet. I'm so as you can notice, French accent. So I'm from Montreal. I'm based in Montreal. I'm the practice director for North America for Payroll. So for those who watched some of the previous LinkedIn sessions, you won't see any dancing pickles here. So just to make sure that it's clear to everyone.
You don't want to see Serge dance either. So
no. That's why I'm sitting. So just to give you a little bit of background of myself, so I'm kind of saying that I have functional technical background, so I know enough to be dangerous. That's what the programmers sometimes say. So I have a programming background, not in SAP, but previously. But been doing SAP HCM implementations for the last 20 years. And since 2012, when SAP acquired SuccessFactors, I started doing Employee Central implementation. So I do have my professional certification in EC, and even with 20 years of payroll, I only have my ECP certification because it just, came out like a little bit more than a year now. So yeah, that's what it is. So Paul, on your side, so on the employee, we'll start with the Employee Central, area. So what are things that, customers were, that were asking and that they do get in that H1 2020 release?
Yeah, thanks, Serge. Just before we get into those enhancements, I think from the H1, just I suppose in these unique times, should I say, with COVID-19, there has been, I suppose, a lot of need from our clients, from our customers, in terms of really managing the COVID-19 configuration, in terms of tracking data around risk for employees, high risk areas, etc. So Rizing and SAP have come out with so some nice configuration there that allows clients to easily set up certain portlets and sections to manage the employee and to manage those risk assessments as well. So I think that's a nice a nice piece to start on. I mean, I think it's necessary to mention that from a H1 perspective. What we see from customers is, I mean, there is such a vast amount to Employee Central. When we think of core HR, service center, time management, benefits, etc., that it's slightly piecemeal the way it has to be done, because you need to make sure the enhancements are going in each area. One of the nice enhancements, Serge, and I think you see, we've talked a little bit about this as well, is the ability in the audit section to now see the name of the user. So for personnel info, our job info or comp info, it's always nice to see if who's made that change in terms of a salary, etc. So
it's always better than 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Like who actually is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
And that's it. And having to run an audit report is always a pain in the backside. So I think that's key, and that's a nice enhancement there as well. One area that is also been a nice improvement, I suppose, is around the contingents, which is an area I know close to your heart as well, and the fact that we have concurrent employment now available there.
We also have something. We also have something on. We also have something on the payroll side, actually, on concurrent employment, because as you know, the concurrent employment for payroll is mainly, I'll say country based. So not all countries necessarily do have concurrent employment. So in this release, now Australia has the concurrent employment, I'll say activated, that you can use concurrent employment for Australia, which is for Australian people, a good thing.
Yeah, we have a lot of and we have, I suppose, we have a lot of Australian clients as well, so that's certainly going to come in useful. To tie into that, we have the I suppose, again, a lot of the enhancement I see in this release is around that data automation and the data validation piece. So for the syncing of work order to job information area, if we think of fields like location or function, we have that facility now, and again, it's just making HRIS analyst jobs a little bit easier, which is nice. Another significant enhancement is around the public sector, that industry feature that we now have the ability to actually leverage some of those S4HANA finance objects. When we think of funds or grants or the functional areas, so that real-time integration, and that will be, I think that will be very appreciated by a lot of our clients in the public sector then as well. Would you agree?
Yeah, for sure. And in Canada, actually, SAP is just won the federal government implementation of EC and EC payroll. So it's going to be a huge use for sure, because they have a lot of public sector. It is public sector, so there's going to be a lot of funds and things like that. So
yeah, I think. Yeah, it's interesting, because certainly in the UK, what we see as well, we have a number of public sector organisations looking to make that shift to the cloud as well. And I think that's certainly in terms of improvements that the SAP will continue to invest, I'm sure.
Yeah, for sure.
In terms of, I suppose other areas that there has been improvements is around the delegation. So probably as much around the business experience for manager self-service or your directors, to give the ability around the auto delegation as well. So there's a nice feature which has been enhanced around auto delegation requests to auto delegation requests for me, so I can see as a manager what has been pushed to me as well. And then on top of that, we have the ability to actually specify the start time and the end time of the auto delegation. So that, I think, if I think practically again, is a manager goes to a conference for a couple of days and he or she wants to pass that pass his or her workflows to a peer or maybe a direct report. That facility is there, and in a similar vein, I suppose if that person is on vacation or annual leave, that ability is there as well. So again, I think the workflows is something that is well covered in the mobile area as well within SuccessFactors, and it's certainly something that we see as a huge benefit for our clients then as well. Another area, maybe Serge, just to tie yourself in, is around the no-show piece for EC. We know there's a facility there, but from payroll, there's been some developments as well.
Yeah, for sure, because as you know, that in Q4 2019 they've integrated that no-show option on the EC side, but then for a client that was using Employee Central Payroll, they had to do all the the other activities on the ECP side all manual. So and now with the COVID-19, I would say it's not just that, but I think there's going to be a little bit more no-shows. On these even like tougher times. So what they did basically is that through the integration, now when you report someone as no-show, the system actually, the integration will actually deactivate the employee in Employee Central Payroll, so that there's no payment done to the employee, so it stops. So you're sure that it doesn't go through the process where you have to revert things and all that, so it's going to be a great improvement, at least on for the managers not to have to manually do all those stopping or deactivating.
Yeah, and I mean, even from, if I think of a sector, certainly like call center, I know we work with so those organizations, and you could have 5 or 6 people every Monday just maybe potentially not showing up, and it's now we have that facility, as you say, to manage it, which is nice.
Yeah,
good stuff.
Yeah, on my side, the things before, I go into some of the things that the client were asking, again, with the subject of COVID-19, like you were saying on your side, I think it's important there was a lot of questions from the customers about, what are the impacts on our payroll? And what does SAP do in some areas of, like, specifically for payroll? So I suggest all people to go to there is an SAP blog that was created, one from SAP directly, that gives you some kind of links. It helps you try to find out your way. But also internally, we've asked our payroll experts from the different regions to create a specific blog on what are the impacts for the specific countries, and not just necessarily what SAP is providing as potential from an HRSP, new nodes or something like that you would need to implement, but also some business impact. Like, even though, like, for Canada there was nothing really to be done in ACP, but still there was how can I say, business impacts. So our experts basically through the blog are explaining some of the impacts. And for us, as an example, again, for Canada, different provinces, different impacts. So, good stuff and good blogs to go through. And I think you'll get you'll get the quick links of the blogs there in the comments. So thanks for sharing that. So one big area that for clients that are using Employee Central Global Benefits, One of the things I know that, there's a lot of people that are saying, it's not necessarily ready or things like that. But some of the reasons why, people were saying that is that there was some kind of like missing integrations between the global benefits and the payroll. So the only thing that was available was the employee contribution, so the deductions. When you were creating employee central global benefits, it was creating a recurring deduction, and then in EC, and then replicating back into ECP. But now in this release, and it's funny because I'm on a project and we're actually using that, and we just made it work, is the integration of the employer contributions also. So it doesn't go into, it's a special object that they've created for the integration of the employer contributions for insurance, but it does replicate again in ECP through an info type 14, so a recurring deduction or payment. So you just need to make sure that your pay components are mapping, and you do all the mapping, and it's going to go through, which is it makes it, I'll say, usable now. So we do have clients that are using Employee Central global benefits, so that's cool.
Great.
Another piece also, which is funny in a sense. So there was a limitation, when you're doing replication between EC and ECP, there's what we call date specification. So for people that are old like me that know the numbers, so info type 41, your date specification, initially there was a limitation of 12 date types. But then there was something that was created on the, I'll say, SAP side or the backend system that you could go up to 24 date types. But then the replication wasn't working, so you couldn't go over those 12 dates. So it was kind of a a misleading thing where you have the availability on one side, but you don't have the integration there. But one funny thing though, they did change the message. Basically, when you're trying to replicate, now it says, instead, even though you're just replicating 13 dates, it's going to tell you that you shouldn't go over 24. And it's just, I think it's just a piece that they missed. I don't know why, but I'm actually opening a ticket for that. But that's a funny thing. That's something that should be available in this release. Some smaller changes for specific. So for Indonesia, they've created in the integration there. So you can now replicate the contract elements. Some personal info for China, Hong Kong. Also for South Africa, there was some changes made. Netherlands, and then there was some integration also for Egypt for the quotas. So in technically speaking, again, the numbers 2006 and the quota payout. So now there is an integration. So these are the things, that people or the changes that were made. There's another one, like a small one that you would see. So there's, sometimes when you look at the data replication from EC versus the SAP log through SLG1 in ECP, sometimes you kind of see, that you can't find like the differences. Why is it saying something on one side and you see something different on the other side? So what SAP created, so they created a new report that would actually go and check or validate the consistency between what is the status on the data replication monitor on the EC side, and then compares it with what's in SAP. So you get a nice, report that gives you inconsistency between the two systems. Okay. I don't know if you've heard from clients there that the
Yeah, I think, Serge, I think it's a good point. I think certainly probably in the past 18, 24 months, we've seen a lot of clients satisfied, but definitely looking for a little bit more of an intuitive way to manage that area. So, I mean, again, it's good that SAP have invested there and makes the payroll, I suppose, the payroll administrator, HR admin, HR analyst, their lives a little bit easier in that sense. So I think that's a big positive. Any other thoughts from a payroll perspective?
Well, I'll keep the other one, which is the payroll control center. I'll keep it for a little later there, but because I'm actually excited about all that, so I'll keep it for a little bit later. But on your side, Paul, like, what are the things that you've seen in this release that excites you about? Like, what are main things that you've seen?
Yeah. I think one of the big ones is certainly around the team absence calendar, and for managers, most notably, the ability to actually view their indirect reports and to see exactly potential the leave there and the absence and attendance piece. So that's something that clients have been looking for certainly over the past couple of years. We can now see the public holiday or the absence type as well, which is important. We can display a monthly view as opposed to just a weekly view as well. So it gives a little bit more of a flavor as to the next 4 to 5 weeks. So that's that really, I think we've heard positive things from clients there in the past few weeks when they've heard of that. So that's really cool. Another area around position management and the automation, I would say, to around intelligent services. So if I take the example of a requisition, we can now ensure that every time a position is changed or created, even that the parallel requisition or the aligning requisition data will change also through intelligent services. And I think, I mean, again, for those sectors that are moving very quickly and have high turnover, that's key, and it's ensuring that data consistency as well. I think along the recruiting journeys. So that's certainly something, certainly our clients in the UK and I will be appreciative of, and I'm sure for North America as well. In terms of other areas, the managed pending hires, I mean, if we look at some of our largest clients, we see that recruiting to onboarding to Employee Central flow, the process flow, as so critical. And now we have that managed pending hires. They've really reworked that SAP, so they've probably taken a little bit of slack in terms of how that looked, but they've invested and they've changed in terms of the look and feel. And again, it's catering for industries or for businesses that need to probably hire a little bit faster. And the pending hires actually available on the one screen, and I think that's a real key thing. And I think it's something that I know a couple of years ago was had come up with one or two clients. So I'm very happy about that. In the same sense, Serge, from just your own opinion, payroll wise, what are you thinking is going to whet the appetite for this release?
Yeah, it's funny because there's some visual side of things, with some that the clients would all see, and some others that are more in the background, more for I'll say the technical people, or the consultants, or the ones that are doing things. So the first one that would be visual to a client would be, when you go into the payroll information on the profile of the employee, where you can get access to the different info types, or when you can get access to the pay statement. So now what they've added there is, first of all, they've added like a comment at the top, right? We're saying, when is the last successful or even the failed replication happened? So instead of having to go into the replication monitor to see what's the status, if you go to the employee itself, then you would see exactly when was the last replication happening for them in the status. So that's a cool thing. Secondly, in the same area, when you have the mashup, so all the info types that you're having, you can define which ones are mandatory for payroll, so that just looking at the information there, you would see which one should have something. So what they've added also is that's on the left side of the label, let's say, of the info type. You would get a star saying that it's a mandatory info type. But then on the right side, they would have an exclamation mark icon to basically tell you that if there is something that was entered for that specific info type. So you kind of have the, both sides of things. So that it's a mandatory information that's needed, but you also know, or you have a visual, you see it, that you have something in there. So that would be the first enhancement that happened in this release, which is pretty cool for the people that are, more, I'll say more the admin people, but because these are the ones, having access to the mashup screen. So that would be the first visual piece. On the back-end side, so for people that are, that know the payroll control center from, I'll say from a front-end side, so when you're in SuccessFactors, you see all the nice pictures and you see all the nice alerts giving you the numbers, statistics and all that. It looks all nice and gives you all the steps. But in the background, there's a lot of work that needs to happen, and basically, so before, like the person that was setting up the payroll control center needed to go through the IMG to do all kinds of configuration items. So going back and forth, from one side to the other. So what SAP created is a payroll control center workbench. So it's really it's just a transaction that you go in, and then you would get in basically one screen access to the different pieces of how you create a validation, what are the the solutions that are attached to it, what are the parameters that are attached to it. So SAP is really working hard on making sure that the payroll control center gets really, I'll say, easier, because as some of you may know, there is what they call a payroll control center simplified version. Yes, it's a little bit simplified, but then there's still a lot of technical side of things that some people don't see because they only see the visual part of it. So that would be one of the big things that SAP created in this release for sure. As part of the payroll control center, I would say one of I was going through this and I was so excited, reading through it. So they called it the alert dependencies. So when you create your policies, you need to validate different things. So I'll give an example. So gross pay over a certain amount. But then, you have a second policy or a second validation rule that basically validates if your pay variance by a certain percentage. And in a case where your employee would have a gross pay over, I don't know, $20,000, you would get the first validation of the first alert being triggered. So you have a 1, so you have one employee there. But then because of that, the pay variance from the previous pay is actually over the percentage that you've put. So what SAP created now is alert dependencies. So what you can say is that, okay, don't trigger the pay variance over a certain percentage if the employee already have that gross pay over a certain amount. So it reduces a little bit the noise, that people would see in the payroll control center. So that's a pretty cool thing. So that's great news. Second thing I would say, they call it the Data Replication Monitor 2.0. That you can activate. So if you go in the EC settings, you can activate the Data Replication Monitor 2.0, even if it says not for production yet, and you'll understand why. It's because there's some missing functionality at this point. So need to activate that, need to do some role-based permissions, need to define the system that it needs to connect to, just to make sure. But at the high level, what they did is that it looks more like a Fiori style UI. So when you'll see a different view of what you're seeing today, completely different. There's some enhancement on the performance to making sure for clients that have a lot of employees, it performs better. Instead of having to go into the extended view, you see the message right away, so it is there. You can do all kinds of filtering. but there's some missing functionality. So you can't filter on country. There's no employee selection. In the current data replication monitor, you could select a specific employee. But at the same time, if you think about it, now you have the status on the payroll information. That's the first thing where you should go. And then secondly, the idea is not to have any failures, in your data replication monitor. So another piece that is missing is there's no delete option. But one of the things that it's pretty cool about what they did is that, in the current version of the data replication monitor, you don't necessarily have the status of all the replications that may happen between the systems. So now in the replication 2.0, you would see, the employee master data replication, you would see the employee org assignment replication, you would also see the plan working time, like we were talking before, the InfoType 2003. Also the absences, so you would also see the absence replication status, and then the time pay components, so the InfoType 2010, so all your timesheet stuff, that goes from your EC timesheet into a pay component in ECP. So these are, I'll say, the main things, and I'm really excited about, some of the stuff they did on the Payroll Control Center, because personally, I think the Payroll Control Center is probably one of the, area in payroll, generally speaking, that is amazing. Everything that you can do. It is technical, but once you make it work, it's great. So I don't know, Paul, on your side, is there any additional stuff that you've seen?
Yeah, Serge, and it's funny you talk about the Payroll Control Center. Yeah, I mean, that's certainly a lot of our clients are raving about the Payroll Control Center, and it just added the continued investment in it as well. But it's funny, I suppose, what payroll people get excited about. In terms of the time management area, I'll talk about that in a minute. There was one question that came in around the option to auto-generate a workflow based on a particular expiry of a passport or contract. So yeah, we can create a business alert to a dynamic role or a group as well, or a standard role in terms of manager HR. So for the end of a fixed term contract. So we see that as a pretty common use case in Employee Central there as well, and also for the passport capability. So that's a good question. To speak about finish off on that question. I think we have the ability to maybe set up a rule maybe 4 to 6 weeks before the passport expires, and that's normally what we see, and that gets workflow to our HRIS team, and it's managed from there as well. To speak about the time management area, we haven't talked too much about that, Serge. There's been a number of nice enhancements there as well. From an ESS perspective, we have the ability now for employees who have unused time accounts to be able to apply for to be able to request a balanced payout there as well. So that's a nice enhancement. We also have the ability for automatic periodic update for time accounts. So if we want our employees maybe to be able to carry forward 40 or 50 hours in a time period, maybe per month, we have that ability then as well. And I think that's pretty critical then as well. The shift planning area. So we have the ability now for the third-party shift planning systems to be able to push data into SuccessFactors, into that temporary planned time table as well. So there is continued. I mean, we've spoken about this in recent months as well. Huge investment in the time management area, and it's looking to get as close as possible to the big hitters, and also to real time, and also so that's nice to see as well. And I mean,
I've seen something on my side also. You're talking about the planned working time. There's actually something now in the integration, where in current days when you need to replicate your work schedule rules, normally you need to make sure that they exist in both systems, and there's no way really to like create them or recreate them. So you need to maintain them in both systems. So what SAP created basically is the option to create planned working time. So instead of having the actual work schedules, you can send, in our ECP world, we call them substitutions. So Infotype 2003, that will build the work schedule. So instead of having each work schedule, what you could get is like having a generic one, but then have the actual planned working time being pushed from EC. So that, reduces a lot of double, creation of things between the systems. So we see a lot of more integrations between the systems. So it's pretty nice.
Yeah, we have a couple of clients now with that. I suppose had that pain point, so it's nice again that they have managed to resolve that. One other area I suppose we haven't mentioned maybe is around the service center. So with the Ask HR facility, we have the ability now for users to be able to see on the Apple and Android devices their open tickets then as well. So that's a really key feature, a key improvement then as well. And we have an accompanying blog as well that'll be shared alongside this webinar also. So that's maybe one to check out. Serge, any other thoughts from a payroll perspective?
Well, the only thing I saw, and we kind of like forget about it, is like you're saying, you were talking about the Ask HR and mobility is really the mobility side, where there's always improvement made to the different applications there. And from what I've seen is that now in the timesheet side of things for the mobility, now custom fields that you would have created for your timesheet are now available through the mobile, which is great.
Yeah.
Now you have the full capacitor functionalities.
Yeah. That's big, I think, isn't it? I mean, having the ability again to manage workflows, manage time off, time sheets on the mobile, and then alongside obviously the adjoining HR modules, performance, etc. So it's looking to really make mobile the place to go. I suppose one would argue, one would think as well, where less people on the move, but it's really just it's capturing that necessity anyway. So no, that's good.
Yeah, that's cool. So I don't know, Craig, is there any additional questions or questions that were asked?
Craig, I think he's on mute.
Yeah, you're on mute.
Sorry. Very common during these times to be stuck on mute. So I had a question from beforehand for you, Paul. I think this will be good for you. What client system roles would really appreciate this particular release?
Yeah, it's a good question, Craig. I think I've seen in previous releases anyway, in my opinion, there's been a lot of focus around the employee experience, so a lot around the ESS. I think for this particular H1 release, I see it, and I have a kind of a soft spot in my old role as a HRIS analyst and doing a lot of data manipulation, data conversion, and some of it was painful and some of it wasn't. But I think it's the HRIS analyst. It's a focus around the validation of data and the automation of data across the SuccessFactors suite, and even across, we talked about the time area, third-party time systems, even inbound from third-party systems then as well. So it's that kind of HRIS role that its release will help. Serge, any thoughts there?
No, it's true. I'm really aligned with what you're saying for sure. Yeah. There's a lot of
I suppose it's the payroll admin from in your side.
Even
so
there, makes life easier for sure.
It sure does.
Great. And Serge, I got one for you. Just kind of like a general one. I've heard some rumblings about FlexPay. What do we need to know about FlexPay?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So that's really something. So for those who don't know what FlexPay is not, it's an extension. So basically it's an extension created by SAP. So it is something created by SAP. And for now, it's mainly or exclusively for US clients. And I won't go into the details. You can reach out to us later on, but just to give you a little, idea of a high level idea of what it is. And we've made it, we've activated in our Synchrony Payroll solution at Rizing. But what it is basically is for employees to get paid in advance for the time that they've already run or worked, even though the payroll wasn't yet, created. So at a high level, it's basically going into an app saying, okay, I do have $200 available because I've worked for that time, and you can request, up to a certain amount of that money, and you get that amount directly paid to you. And then, the process of payroll. So there is, and just to be sure that everyone, understand, is like the person that pays is not the company. Like, I mean, at the end you're paying, but it's really like a third party that actually does a payment to the employees. Really great functionality. So if you're really interested for US clients there, just reach out to us. We can walk you through the details there.
Great. I see that we do have a couple more questions in the chat, but unfortunately we're kind of running low on time right now. So if you have any other questions for Paul or for Serge, feel free to drop them in chat or send us a note at hcm@rizing.com, and we can try to help you out with those. Yep. So anything else from you, Paul or Serge, before we venture out?
Maybe just a point around onboarding 2.0, and I think over the next, it's nice that we have, I suppose, EC and onboarding 2.0. I think we're going to see significant improvements there as well, and we've done a good few demos, I suppose, for clients in the last couple of months. So it's Fabian Hernandez, big shout out to him. So he's our resident expert there, or he's my go-to guy. So yeah, happy to see how the significant improvements it will make for clients there as well. Thanks, Craig. Thanks, sir.
And also maybe Craig at the end, just for, I think we do have a webinar. Is it a webinar tomorrow on Lyra for COVID-19? So people that are really impacted by business wise, that they want to have information and needs to have some, I'll say, dashboards. Make sure that you register for this one.
Yeah, that's a great one to mention. Yeah, we have that one tomorrow. I believe we're going to drop a link to register for that in the chat. Yeah, if you have employees coming back to work, manage their data, make sure they're in safe places, that they're not being at risk of being contacted with COVID. That's a great tool. Great. Well, I appreciate you both, Paul and Serge, hopping on. Great detailed look at EC and ECP. Again, if you have more questions for them, hcm@rizing.com. So that's all we have for you on Employee Central and ECP. Thank you for joining us for this live stream and for joining us for the last 6 weeks. We've really enjoyed sharing all this information with you all. We like it so much, we're probably going to keep having these Rizing LinkedIn sessions on other topics. And so if you have any suggestions, feel free to reach out to us. I'll comb my hair again, I'll trim my beard, and we'll come up here. And so again, that's hcm@rizing.com. I did want to mention one other webinar, and this ties directly into what we've been talking about the last 6 weeks. As I mentioned earlier, we have a webinar coming up on June 23rd. As many of you know, this has been a very different release from past releases, not just because it is a biannual release versus a quarterly release. SAP actually changed the way they sort of release information to partners, release information to customers with webinars and all that. So there's been some learning for us and for the customers on how to kind of manage this new release schedule. So we're going to get into that, some of our lessons learned, some of our best practices for all of you heading into that H2 release. So if SAP is going to be still using, the same Q&A format, the same what's new tool, we're going to look at that and how you can navigate that to find information. I've had discussions with our practice directors, and I know that there's a lot to dig into here. So I'm looking forward to listening to this. So again, that's June 23rd. We'll drop a link for you to register in the comments, and be sure to check that out so you can be prepared for the next release. So again, thanks for joining us each week as we went through step by step, module by module, this release. We'll be back soon to talk about more topics. And again, thank you, and join us again next time here on LinkedIn.